There was a small company down in Houston. These guys made rubber seals from small to large, just a whole bunch of different Teflon type seals for the oil industry. They were a $5 million company, which means they're a very small company in that world. Only had 120 employees, and about 40 of them were slated to be laid off. We went in, and the president of the company said that he felt the reason that they were losing business, they couldn't gain any more business, was because it was taking them too long to answer a request for a quote on parts. If somebody from the field called them and said, I need these types of O-rings in this time frame, how much will it cost me? And they were taking about 6 or 7 days to get an answer to these people, which I thought that seemed long because they were very small parts and pretty much the same from time to time. But I didn't know how bad it was. So as we dug in, we found that their competitors were getting answers back in 24 hours. So yes, by the time they answered this request for a quote, that contract had been awarded to somebody else. So the president challenged the team. I worked with him for just a few months. It was a short engagement, but he challenged the team to get that down to something less than 24 hours, and they literally laughed, said it couldn't be done. So over the course of that couple of months, we did a lot of analysis, and it was a very similar problem that you would see in a manufacturing space where the phone would ring, the people would describe what they needed, the customer would. It would have to go to engineering to make sure that they had something like it or make modifications. Then it had to go to operations to see when it could be built. And then it had to go to estimating to see what the cost was. And then it had to go to a planner and then back to the person who would call the potential client and tell them. Well, every single one of those people sat in a different building. And in every single building that you went into and looked at the desk where that incoming work was, there was a stack of papers. This went on the top. They pulled from the bottom. So it was a first in, first out type world. And we blew that up. Over the course of about a week and a half, we tore down an entire interior of the building, put up new cube walls, and had cells where every single one of the players that had anything to do with responding to that RFQ was sitting side by side. We had 4 cells, and the idea was they never had more than 4 requests in work at a time. So we had slots on the outside, and it was first in, first out, but you never had more than 4. And everybody was sitting right there, so you weren't sitting in somebody's stack for days. On Thursday of the last day of that reconstruction, we were testing the system. Prior to deploying it, I was talking to the president, and he told me a story that he was at a party. It's a very small world. And there was a guy at the party who had put in a request that they gave back to him $1 million order. Big growth, 20% growth for a company their size. So he's excited, walks over to this potential customer and says, hey, do you like a quote? The customer said, I'm sorry, we awarded that contract. So he tells me this story, then he comes in and tells the team this and says, we have got to get better. We are going to drive ourselves out of business if we can't get better at this. So we're in Thursday morning, completely reconstructed process flow with visual indicators in place to say what was on schedule, what wasn't, where they needed help, and hit go. The phone rang at about 8 a.m. A request came in, the receptionist dropped it in one of the cells. About 45 minutes later, they handed it back to her. She picked up the phone, called them, and they won the contract. The first one.
That's insane.
Throughout the course of that day, they won about 8 or 9 contracts. I can't remember how, but it totaled $250,000 in new business for them. That $1 million that they had lost, they had just regained a quarter of it in one day. So the president pulls an all hands and tells everybody there that if you have a layoff notice in your hand, tear it up. We now have a competitive advantage. We're going to start taking business instead of losing. That's success. At the end of the day, that says that the little things that we can show you about how to make your life easier can actually make your company grow. So we saved 40 jobs in the blink of an eye. It was pretty cool. And I've studied these methods from under some of the best in the world. So understanding not just the tools, but the fact that these tools have to become a part of just the way you do business and implementing them into your business is the coaching that I give them. And then yes, the pushing. You know, they come back at me with, we can get it done in 48 hours. That's not the target. The target's 24. And by the time we were done, we were winning a new bid every 4 hours.